Democratic vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris and her husband Doug Enghoff announced they will continue campaigning after both tested negative.
At this point, the vice presidential debate scheduled for next Wednesday, October 7th, is still on. So what does this mean for the president?
Joining us now is the department chair of the UW-Madison Political Science Department, David Cannon.
David, good to see you today.
Hi, David. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, good to be with you.
A lot of people are concerned about the president's ability to govern. How will this affect that?
Well, if the symptoms are mild, the way the White House is saying right now, he should be able to conduct normal business. You have to remember that about 40% of the people who get COVID actually don't have any symptoms at all. And it sounds like the president's symptoms are fairly mild. So if it stays like this, he should be able to still conduct business as maybe not as normal, probably have to reduce the schedule to some extent. But if it turns into more serious illness, then that could be a different situation.
What is that situation?
Well, I mean, worst case scenario would be, let's say he ends up being hospitalized, and maybe if he even has to be on a ventilator, the way that a very small percentage of COVID patients are, at that point you might be looking at invoking the 25th Amendment and having Mike Pence step in the way we've done 3 different times in American history, where the president has had to be temporarily in surgery under anesthesia. Then the vice president will take over for a short period of time. So that could happen if the symptoms end up getting much more serious. But right now, it looks like that's not going to be the case.
This comes 1 month before the election, and it obviously takes President Trump off of the campaign trail. How does this affect the campaigns of both candidates?
Well, clearly this is going to have an impact on the Trump campaign, because their mode of operation for the last month or so has been, Trump's trademark large rallies. That's the way he campaigned all through 2016. He's been doing that now over the last couple of months in this campaign, and the president loves that style of campaigning. So he won't be able to do that, obviously, at least for the next couple of weeks. And so that's a fairly significant change in the way that President Trump is conducting the campaign. On the other hand, Joe Biden showed earlier this summer, you can conduct a pretty effective campaign virtually. So he was running his campaign without being on the trail at all up until about a month ago. And so you can still hold virtual meetings, fundraisers, meet with voters, virtually. I think the public is getting more accustomed to the online world, because so many of us are doing work from home these days, that I think it's easier than it would have been, say, had everyone else not been doing this as well.
The president has downplayed this virus for many, many months. Is this going to affect his followers?
Well, right. It's an interesting point about the sort of partisan reaction to the COVID virus, that early on, when we first found out about it, there weren't many differences between Democrats and Republicans, the way that we were responding to it in terms of what kind of approach was needed to deal with it. Over the summer, you saw a big gap open up where Democrats still thought it was a serious concern, whereas Republicans started to think it wasn't as serious. So now with the president testing positive, you might expect that gap to diminish a bit, because people will see, oh my gosh, our president tested positive, this is real.
David, thanks for your time today. Interesting day in American history, that's for sure.
Good to see you, David. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome.